How's it going, everyone? Happy holidays. It is the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. I am James Lynch. He is JHK. If you haven't watched the show before, basically we preview an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we got a great one for you here. Former light heavyweight champion IJan Blachowicz is going to be taking on Aleksandar Rakic. We're going to be previewing that entire fight, going through all the stats, and then giving our picks at the very end. But before we get into that, make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. It's the best app on the planet. We don't have any picks to put in. We can still put them in a bit earlier. You know, there's a January 15th card. Get ahead on it. That way you won't forget. I should probably do that because I tend to forget every now and then, although I did put in my picks last week, which is great. And also make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We will be answering questions. So once we're done the breakdown, we'll answer questions on whatever you guys want to talk about. We like to talk about the fight, but obviously there's a lot going on in MMA right now, despite not having a UFC card on Saturday. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, like I said, and let's dig into this fight here. So first, let's talk about how we got to this fight, as we usually do. This fight came together, for a variety of reasons. But the main one is that Aleksandar Rakic needed a fight. He had been someone that, obviously had a good year this year, getting that win over Thiago Santos, but has since been on the sideline since then. And it's been difficult for him securing an opponent. And part of that had to do with the fact that the Glover Teixeira and Jan Blachowicz fight was initially supposed to take place earlier in September. And then it looked like Yuri Prochazka and Aleksandar Rakic were going to fight each other. And then that ends up getting pushed. And then Yuri's the backup. So Rakic has been on the sidelines, not by design. I spoke to him last week, and I'll definitely reference some things from that interview in this breakdown. But, from his vantage point, he wanted a fight. It was just a matter of there not being any opponents put together. And Jan Blachowicz, this is a great opportunity for him to get back in the driver's seat. A pretty, again, that Glover Teixeira and Jan Blachowicz fight, we previewed it here. It was a close fight, but I think Jan would agree that was not his best performance, and this is a good opportunity for him to take out a guy who's on a nice winning streak and can get back to prominence in terms of where he is in the division. And for Rakic, I mean, this has got to be a title shot if he beats Jan Blachowicz here. So a lot on the line for both fighters. JHK, just your thoughts on the matchup and this headlining the UFC Fight Night card.
Yeah, it's perfect for both fighters. I think Jan, he didn't really take too much damage. I don't think he really even got hurt. It looked like he got rocked in that last fight a little bit, but other than that, there wasn't much injuries there, and he's hopping back in, right in the driver's seat. I think that he's taken advantage of this spot. I think, if he would have turned down this fight, he probably would have got a fight that would not get him into title contention again immediately. And this is the fight, man. This is the fight that's going to get you in there. And it's a good matchup. Aleksandar Rakic, if you look at his last fight, it was in March. This fight is also in March, a year layoff, man. I think Jan is taking advantage of that too, man. You look at a guy that's been out for a while and you just fought. Why not take on, that guy? I like the fight.
Key detail I forgot to mention. So this is the Fight Night card. It's going to be taking place on March 26th, Nationwide Arena in Columbus, Ohio, JHK. So this is, I believe, the first Fight Night card that's not at the Apex since before the pandemic. So really awesome. Actually, I guess first card before the pandemic would have been Oliveira, Kevin Lee, but you get where I'm going with here. It's been a while since we've had a Fight Night card with fans that is not in the Apex in Las Vegas. So kind of a random fight to have in Ohio.
Yeah, I take that with a grain of salt, though. You know what I mean? I don't know if they're going to have a fight night in Columbus, Ohio. You said it's odd. Like, why would you have two European fighters fighting in Columbus, Ohio? Why wouldn't you have them fight in Europe somewhere? There's got to be countries over there where you could put on the show. I don't know why. Bellator did a show in London. Why isn't the UFC done a show in London? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't either. Or at least go somewhere in the US or Canada where there's, a big, I don't know, Polish fan base or, I guess Austrian fan base or something, so it's one of those things where, I'm not really sure why, but you bring up a good point. At the time of recording this, December 21st, if you've been paying attention, all the major sports are being affected by COVID. Even here in Canada, I know they've just implemented the PCR testing again. So as of today, I cannot go back to the US unless I get a PCR test, and that's like almost $200. So a lot of people are kind of on lockdown now. So we'll see if it happens. They might end up going back to the Apex for this one. And if that does happen, that obviously is a bit different for this fight because, as we know, the Apex has a smaller cage, and that tends to favor fighters with knockout power. But I guess they're both good strikers, right? So
yeah, and also I heard that there's rumors that they're going to shut down the NBA, like completely, like after Christmas or something. So if the NBA shuts down, that is major, and that Apex, man, that is coming in handy for the UFC.
Yeah, saving a lot of money that way.
Mhm.
Okay, let's get to the two fighters at hand here. Well, first, the tail of the tape as we see here. Aleksandar Rakic, 29 years old. Jan Blachowicz, 38. That is a big age gap. I think we forget how young Rakic is, right? Like, just because he's been in the UFC for so long, I actually thought he was a bit older, but he's not. 29 is pretty young and, not even in the prime of his career, you could say. The obvious difference here is the edge and experience here for Jan Blachowicz. He's got 37 fights compared to just 16 for Rakic. 14 wins for Rakic, 28 wins for Jan Blachowicz, 2 losses for Rakic. Although we'll talk about one of those, I'm sure, because I think that should have gone the other way. And then 9 losses for Jan Blachowicz as well. 9 knockouts, 8 knockouts. So that's interesting, right? Like, you think of Jan Blachowicz as this finisher, and we've certainly seen him finish some really impressive fighters, including Dominic Reyes. But Rakic actually has more knockout wins, and he's got half the fights, which is crazy. So that's pretty impressive. Although if you look at the subs, he's only got 1 submission victory. Jan Blachowicz has 9. 72% finishing rate for Rakic, 61% finishing rate for Blachowicz. Although there was earlier in his career he was going the distance a lot. And then if you look at the height and reach, reach-wise they're exactly the same. Rakic with just a slight height advantage in this one. So going to be pretty similar physically when it comes to the fight itself. As you can see here, the odds actually have this as a dead even fight. Actually, well, it looks like here it's saying minus 130, Jan plus 110. We'll talk about the odds when we get to our picks, but let's look at Rakic here. Great win over Thiago Santos in his last fight. A good win. I wouldn't say a win that really made people want to see that title shot. I think that's why you're seeing Yuri Prochazka get ahead here. No, and I think, listen, Thiago Santos is a good win on your resume. I don't think there's any denying that. And I think you could also argue that Thiago Santos is as good of a win as beating Dominic Reyes in the case of Jan Blachowicz. It's just the fact that I think if he would have finished Thiago Santos, I know it was only 3 rounds, but that would have maybe made a bit more noise in the division. And I think that's where, I think there was no rush to put Rakic in a title position. You got the win over Anthony Smith. Similar situation. I think it was a dominant win over Anthony Smith. Like, I don't know if people remember that fight, but Anthony Smith was not in that fight whatsoever. I think, though, that was a fight where I think he could have finished. And I know Smith is a very difficult guy to take out. We've seen some later finishes with him, including when Glover finished him as well. But again, 2 quality wins. I just think that people wanted a little bit more in terms of a finish. And I know they're 2 pretty durable guys, but just that's sort of the footnote on that. And then the Volkan Ozdemir fight, I thought he won that. Volkan Ozdemir, for whatever reasons, has been in all types of close fights. Like, I thought Ozdemir beat Dominic Reyes a couple of years ago. I thought Ozdemir did not beat Aleksandar Rakic, but that's what happens when you go to the judges sometimes. Sometimes the fights are pretty close. And then the 2 fights before that, Jimmy Manua and Devin Clark. I believe I was at the Devin Clark one. It was the fight in Toronto. And he just looked super impressive in that one. And Manua, I mean, that was the beginning of the end for his MMA career. So pretty solid resume, done quite well in the UFC. And like I said, just a decision loss to Volkan that some people felt like he didn't even lose to. I think that's pretty impressive. So his overall record is 14-2. And like I said, still 29 years old. So your thoughts on Aleksandar Rakic as an opponent against Jan Blachowicz?
All right, let's start from the Jimmy Manuwa knockout. Probably one of the best head kick knockouts in the history of the UFC, right? Just one hitter quitter. Jimmy Manuwa was a devastating striker at that time, maybe on the downslope, but still devastating in his striking. And Rakic went in there and smoked him, right? Easy. It was so clean. I don't know why they would keep showing that knockout, man. It's incredible. The Volkan fight, I was there at that fight. And I think the reason why the judges, I agree, Rakic did land more and it seemed like he was more active. But I think the reason why the judges gave Volkan the fight, or 2 of them, is because entering that third round, Rakic's leg was like, there was a baseball on his leg, you know what I mean? And that's something visual that the judges look at and like, oh, he's taking a lot of damage to the leg. And then some of the striking exchanges, they were back and forth. I would have gave it to Rakic, but I feel like that's what edged Ozdemir over, in that fight. The Anthony Smith fight, weird fight, he was dominating, but everybody's yelling like, why is he not finishing this fight? Everybody was. What was it, the 4th and 5th round? Even the 3rd round, people are like, what is wrong with him? It's like Smith was almost giving him the finish, but he just wasn't taking it. He wasn't taking any risks. And I think that, that put a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. Like, when the finish is there, you got to take that finish, because it's like you got to take that title shot, right? You got to win strong. The Thiago Santos fight, I don't know. I don't think Rakic won clearly in my eyes, man. I thought Thiago did pretty good. And this is a Thiago after he got double surgery on his knees, which is a shell of himself. And Rakic I don't think he dominated him like everybody thinks he did. I think that they went back and forth. It was another close fight, like the Ozdemir fight. And that didn't help him any, right? But this one, they're giving it to him, man. They're giving him this next fight. I think that this is the one where he has to go take some risks. You know what I mean? He has to go for the finish here. He needs to. And it's 5 rounds. What was the other 5-round fight that he had? Oh, the Anthony Smith fight. I think that was the only main event he's done 5 rounds. Or was that 3 rounds?
Wasn't Glover you're talking Rakic. Yeah, I think those are the only 2. Yeah,
those are only 2, right? So yeah, this is second 5-round fight, second main event. I think that plays a factor into him and his performances. But in his last couple, I don't know, man. He's won them, but kind of lackluster, man. Not the one that we seen Jimmy Manuel, man. That's the Rakic where we want, right? But we haven't gotten that Rakic in the last couple of fights.
That's true. Yeah, I was going to mention the. I know you kind of alluded to it, but the Thiago Santos. I believe his first fight back was Glover, and then it was Rakic. But you bring up a good point that like the Santos that we're seeing now is not the same Santos that was knocked out Jan Blachowicz. I think we can agree with that, or that fought John Jones. I think the point still stands.
Let me make a correction.
Yeah.
The Anthony Smith fight, they were going to go with 5 rounds, but I remember it was I think there was a late switch and they only fought for 3 rounds. I remember that now.
Right,
not the 4th and 5th round. It was the 2nd and 3rd round where Rakic could have finished the fight, but he just didn't finish the fight. So this is his first 25-minute main event. So I think that this is something, he could take advantage of with that time, because it seems like, as the fight goes, he knows how to, strategize and kind of like, plan out his rounds and everything like that. So maybe it's gonna work out well for him against Jan. Who knows? But he's been lackluster, man. And I know a lot of people probably watching, they're gonna be mad.
A couple other footnotes from my interview with Rakic last week, which by the way I did at 1 a.m. because of the time change and everything over on Hinton. I think it was like 10 a.m. his time, but still did a great interview. Really good stuff from Rakic. We touched on a variety of topics, including Yuri Prochazka getting the title shot, Yuri Prochazka getting the backup spot. Obviously Rakic isn't happy about that. He kind of went off on Anthony Smith, which was interesting, and I kind of get it because it's like, I know Smith's won 3 in a row, and but that was a complete beatdown from Rakic, and I think there was part of him was kind of annoyed by the call out because I think he wasn't ready to go in December, which is when Rakic wanted to fight anyways. So there's a little bit of bad blood there. The other thing that was interesting is that he mentioned that this camp he's going to be doing a lot of cross training. He said he's going to bring guys in. He's going to go to different camps. He mentioned Sweden. I obviously brought up the All-Star gym there, so no, I'm not sure if he's going to get to work with someone like Aleksandar Rakic leading into this fight, but I think it's good that he's trying to add some variety to his camp and really customize things. This is probably the biggest fight of his career. In fact, Thiago Santos is a great opponent, but Jan Blachowicz is an actual former champion. So I think there's a lot going into it. And what was the other thing you mentioned? Yeah, I just think like this is a big moment for him. And I think eventually, if all goes well, and again, I know Glover's the guy you can't count out against Yuri, but everyone wants to see this Yuri and Rakic fight. Like, I feel like the timing of how everything's going is just going to make this fight that much bigger, because I don't know if you've seen the comments between both fighters, like their fan bases, they don't like each other, and it's going to be a mega fight when it eventually does happen, whether it's for a title or not. But I'm really excited for this fight and Rakic to get this opportunity. Let's get to Jan Blachowicz. Bit of a surprising result in the last fight against Glover Teixeira, losing his title, getting submitted. And again, Glover, I don't think anyone was naive to think that Glover couldn't win that fight. The odds were close going in. I think it's just the way the fight that went, like the way the fight ended up, which was that Glover pretty much dominated the fight. And when it got to the ground, Jan Blachowicz, tapped immediately, which, again, maybe it's just like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm out of energy. I don't know what the deal is. It reminded me a bit of the Nunes, when Pena submitted Nunes, similar sort of situation where it just happened so quickly. And it's just, it's disappointing because I finally felt like after that win over Israel Adesanya, Jan Blachowicz got the respect he deserved. People kept counting him out. Here he was winning, and then he has a performance like this. And, after the fight, you could see the look of disbelief in his face where he's like, I can't believe that just happened after building up all this momentum. So disappointing loss. But it's Glover, right? Glover's the exception to the rule. This is a guy that, how many times did we people pick against him, against Anthony Smith or against Thiago Santos? It's like, okay, once he fights Thiago Santos, this is the guy who knocked out, Jan Blachowicz. This is going to be it. And then, of course, Glover finishes him. So, that last fight was kind of a weird one. But here's the big question, and we're going to discuss this as we get into Jan Blachowicz. Is this a sign that maybe this is it? Maybe this is the decline of Jan Blachowicz at 38 years old. At some point, it's got to happen. We saw this last weekend with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. As great as Bilal Muhammad's win was over him, I think it also speaks to the decline of Wonderboy. I don't know if he gets taken down like that, a few fights ago. Is the same thing here occurring with Jan Blachowicz as well? And then you got to look at the win before that against Adesanya. As great as he is, there's obviously a way to beat Adesanya if you're a bigger guy and you can take him down. So those are two things to look at. And then the fights before that, 2 fights where he was counted out. Knocked out Dominic Reyes, great win there. Knocked out Corey Anderson, which if you're seeing what Corey's been doing over in Bellator, that's a really good win on your resume. And then the Souza fight, not a great win, but Souza ended up retiring a few fights after that, but still he got the win regardless, and he took him out. So Jan Blachowicz has had a very interesting career. Let's not forget he started his UFC career at, I believe, 4-3 or 3. It was like, or no, it was like 1-3 or something, and then he ended up going on this crazy run, including him winning the title. So he's had an interesting career, but again, he became a dad. He's getting to be a little bit older. What type of Jan Blachowicz are we going to see in this fight? I will never count him out of a fight because I've done that too many times, and he's still got really good knockout power. But is that knockout power going to be able to knock out a guy like Rakic? It's tough to say because you look at some of the guys that Rakic has fought, they pack a punch as well too. So the experience edge goes to Jan Blachowicz. Obviously, he's got a good ground game as well. We didn't get to see that because he was fighting a better ground guy in Glover. But it's a really interesting matchup here. And again, a key fight here because if Jan Blachowicz loses this, he's probably never going to fight for a title again. I mean, it's just too deep of a division, I think, at this point where I think there's too many guys on the come up that are going to give him problems. So there's a lot on the line here. If Rakic loses this fight, I mean, we talk about this all the time, pressure and optics and everything. If Rakic loses this, it's not the end of the world. He's 29 years old. I'm sure there's a way that he could find his way back to this position. But if Jan loses this, I think it's all or nothing here. So a lot of pressure on the Polish fighter going into this one. So your thoughts on Jan Blachowicz and what he brings to the table in this fight?
First off, piggybacking off what you said, if Jan loses this fight, he ends up being in that position like a Volkan Ozdemir, right? Where he's like in a weird gatekeeper kind of role type thing. He's still ranked good enough to beat a lot of guys, but he's a test for certain guys that they want to build off of. But Jan, man, I feel like he peaked at the perfect moment in his career. Like John Jones left the division, right? He comes in, Corey Anderson. It's almost like a couple perfect matchups for him. And like I said, he peaked and he went in there and just KO'd 2 of the top guys and won the title. And then, had another great performance with a good game plan against Israel Adesanya. Then he goes back he defends the title again against Glover. And Glover's at his peak now. You know what I mean? It's like Glover's peaking at the perfect time when Jan, you know what I mean? It's like the changing of the guard in a way, like they're passing the torch, but the guy's older than the guy that was the champion, like Glover's 42 years old. Jan, I still think that he's good enough to beat probably like 80% of the light heavyweights in the division. That 20%, we'll see if Rakic is in that 20%. You know what I mean? I think Jan, like you said, he packs a punch. Like he can strike. He doesn't really have too much speed, but if he lands accurately, he'll put you out, right? And I think that will never go away with Jan. I think that's something that will always, be with him for many years to come. It's just that, maybe he is in that decline, and that's the question. That's the big question heading into this fight. Did we see Glover? Because Glover really made it look so simple, man. Like, yeah,
he made it look easy.
Yeah, we thought Dominic Reyes was gonna go in there and do what Glover did, but in a different way, with the striking. But he did it. Even Corey Anderson, Corey Anderson went in there. I think he was the underdog in every fight. He just comes in there and knocks everybody off. And then when Glover comes in, it just like he kind of like, I don't know, it was just weird watching it. And I think, like you said, Jan thought it was weird, and now he needs to redeem himself. And I think maybe that's just another way of motivating him. He loses the title. He needs to beat this guy to get back in title contention. And if he does beat him, it puts him on the short list, right? If Glover doesn't keep the title, right? If Glover keeps the title, it's hard to argue for Jan to get a rematch. But I think that's a lot of motivation for him to come back quick and fight Rakic. And I don't know, man. I think this is the fight that we'll really find out if if Jan is going to be, like you said, a top contender for the next year or so.
All right, let's get to our picks. This is a tough one. This is a really, really, really tough one. And I think if we've learned anything, last weekend, what we saw with Chris Daukaus and Derek Lewis is that, the power of the knockout is still a big thing here. It's really interesting. I'm leaning slightly towards Rakic, and the reason I'm leaning slightly towards Rakic is because I am banking on the fact that we're going to see an even better Rakic this time out. He's still 29 years old. I think there's room for improvement. I think what you see is what you get with Jan Blachowicz, and I also think Glover Teixeira kind of laid out the blueprint of how to beat him, assuming that Jan shows up like that again. I don't know. I just think like there's so much on the line here for Jan Blachowicz that like I mean, it's all or nothing here. I just don't know if Jan Blachowicz is going to be able to knock out Aleksandar Rakic. That's what it comes down to it for me, because, you know, I remember that Devin Clark fight in Toronto, and this is years ago, okay? And I think Rakic has certainly improved since then. But do you remember that fight early on? Devin Clark cracked Rakic a few times early on, and it was not looking good for him, and he was able to turn it around and get the finish himself. I think people forget that. You see first round finish or whatever it was it first or second round finish? I got to double check that. It was a first round finish, but I remember early on in that fight thinking, man, Clark might pull this off. So, you know, there is some issues with the striking defense, but I think he's fixed that up the last couple fights, especially fighting a guy like Thiago Santos. And, you know, again, I know Thiago Santos coming off the surgery and everything else, that's still a good win. And Thiago Santos has a knockout win over Jan Blachowicz. Let's not forget that too. I just think that, you know, even with Blachowicz having the 5-round experience, I think Rakic is going to be a little bit fresher. Like, the age gap has to play a role in this fight to a certain degree. And I think Rakic is going to rise to the occasion. I think the time off is going to make him look even better. I'm not going to say it's going to be like an Ortega Korean Zombie situation, but I do think that Rakic is going to go out there and really shine. And I think he knows this too. I mean, look, the guy's got to be pissed off. He's been on the sidelines for a year. He's seeing a guy in Yuri Prohaska who has 2 UFC fights and is now getting a title shot when he's been in the UFC far longer and has picked up more quality wins. I mean, overall, if you look at it here, Aleksandar Rakic has a better resume than Yuri Prohaska right now in terms of what he's done in the UFC. I know there's some earlier fights like against Ledet and whoever else he fought, Manua, who retired shortly after that, but still, I think he's going to come out guns a-blazing. The question is, how is this fight going to end? That's the iffy one. Like, Rakic, not really much of a submission guy, and plus Jan Blachowicz has a really good ground game. He's got good knockout power, but I don't know, we haven't seen him finish like an Anthony Smith or a Thiago Santos when we've seen those guys finished in the, mind you, Smith, I don't think he's been finished at light heavyweight, at least not recently. So that's kind of tough to say, but with it being 5 rounds, you would think Rakic would get maybe a late finish, but I might even go on the side of a decision here. And I will that be enough to get a title shot? You hope so. There's that Ankalaev fight coming up. Maybe he skips the line. We'll see, but I think we're going to see a really good performance here from Rakic. And like I said, with the age gap, with the fact that he's a little bit younger, hasn't really taken much damage, I think Rakic goes out there and wins this fight. But again, you got to worry about the Jan Blachowicz knockout thing. And to be honest, I might even look at the knockout prop for Jan Blachowicz, maybe hedge that with maybe a Rakic by decision or just Rakic straight up here, because the line is pretty close. But I got to go Rakic in this one. I think that he is coming into the prime right now, and I think there's an argument to be made that Jan Blachowicz might be on the decline. So that is what I'm basing my pick off of. Who are you picking, JHK? Who are you going with?
Before I make my pick, you know what's a trip about both these guys? They both lost their pro debuts. And look where they are.
That's fairly common, actually. If you look at there's like a list. Adam Martin, actually, our buddy, he back when he was doing more writing, he did a whole article on fighters that lost their first fight, and there's like a crazy list, like Forrest Griffin, Henan Barrow. I forget. I think even Chris Cyborg lost their first fight. There's a whole list of fighters that just lost their pro debut, and it's, you know what? Might as well get it out of the way early and then fix those adjustments so you can go on a run, right? So
losses don't matter as much in MMA as in boxing, right? Especially early on in your career, because you can always turn it around, use it as experience. You know, Rakic, like you said, he's younger. You know, he has a higher finishing rate. If this fight goes to the ground, I think that you got to give the edge to Jan Blachowicz. Their wrestling kind of seems the same, but Jan Blachowicz more of a submission guy. When it goes to the ground, he can finish on the ground a little bit more. Maybe we haven't seen as much from Rakic because he hasn't been on the ground, you know, but he's taking down a couple of his opponents in the UFC, so he can take guys down. He likes that single leg a little bit. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think these guys are going to stand and trade on the feet. I think it's 50-50. I think both guys can knock each other out. Rakic carries the speed. He still has the power. But as we've seen before, Jan does have more power in his hands. And it's more likely to land with your hands than your feet, right? Or your leg. So I'm looking at Jan Blachowicz. He's going to knock him out. I say in the later rounds. I think these guys are going to stand and trade for a while. Rakic might even hurt Jan early on, you know what I mean? And vice versa. And I think it's going to be going back and forth, but then there's going to be one shot. You know what I mean? One shot. And I think that one shot is going to be Jan landing a big, big right hand. And they're going to kick each other too, man. Jan could kick too, but I'm just saying, I think the Polish power is going to come out in this one. You know, he can't, you know, he didn't show it in his last fight. I think it's going to double up on this one and take out Rakic.
I can see that happening. I also think like I don't know. I feel like I've learned my lesson over these last like couple of weeks of fighters where you think they're still the same fighter and then there's the decline because of the age. Like I said with Wonder Boy. So that's kind of why I'm going with Rakic here as well. Is I just think that I don't know if that Jan exists, the one that knocked out Reyes or those guys. I know we're not that far removed from that fight, but still, I think the last fight might be a sign of things to come. But we'll see. You could be right here. I do agree if it stays standing, it is 50-50, and I would say obviously Jan has more power, but. I think Rakic could kind of chip away at those legs, maybe get a few shots and just tire Blachowicz. It's kind of what I was hoping Chris Dawkins was going to do last week, but obviously he didn't even get out of the first round. But yeah, I think I think I'm going to go Rakic, but that's good. Finally, we disagree one of these weeks. It's been a while that we've been on the opposite end of things, but great fight, good matchmaking here by the UFC, and they should. I think you mentioned the fact that this might not take place to the where they want or whatever. I mean, whenever they decide to do Glover and Yuri, hopefully that's. I mean, mind you, that might be later. I was going to say they should put this as like a backup fight for that card, but I think that Glover wants to take some time off, so I was going to suggest that, but we'll see. Going to be a really good fight. Let's get to questions as we usually do here on the show. Should we keep? Do you want this background or should we do the full screen? I kind of like this one because you get the
this
nice
one, man. I
yeah, so do I.
The background a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we got the Kumite background. Shout out to our buddy Dave who made all our graphics for us. Yeah, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll get to questions right now. Again, happy holidays, everyone. Martin, not really. Martin saying JHK is the Mac.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either. Is that Return of the Mac? I'm not sure. That's a great song. That's awesome. Hype 3, my man in Patreon. Love this guy. Always commenting on my videos. Always being interactive. Thank you, man. Hope you're having a good holiday. Same here with Sinister Story. One of my favorite guys. Talk to this guy every day on the Patreon. Really, really good dude. Same with SRO. He's been here everywhere. UFC 274 May 7th will be in Rio de Janeiro. Do you think that's when they'll do Charles versus Gaichi? It's gotta that makes a lot of. Charles Oliveira is the lightweight champion. The dude needs a hometown fight or home country fight, I should say, right?
Yeah, I think that's the perfect date. Give Charles a little bit of time off. He's been busy, man, fighting. Pretty. How many times did he fight last year? 3 times. That's a pretty consistent.
Yeah, he's got to be up there for fight of the year, by the way.
Yeah, I thought he was. Yeah, he's definitely fighter of the year. One of them.
Him or Usman or any of those guys. Yeah, there's a lot of...
And in Rio, I think that's the perfect place. Also, you could put Jose Aldo on that card against somebody.
Jose Aldo, TJ Dillashaw.
Exactly. Co-main event. There you go. Main event, co-main event. What else is you could put nobodies on there after that and it would sell, I think.
I want my 10% McMaynard. What's up, James and John? How's it going, Jack? Good to hear from you. Just because I know James started watching MMA. When did you start watching MMA?
My first live MMA that I watched was UFC 2 on pay-per-view. That was in like early 90s.
Yeah, you're an OG.
Yeah. Like I was just lucky that my friend's older brother was into fighting and martial arts and all that, and he's the one who paid the money to get the pay-per-view, and we were watching it. And I was just like, when the one that I think the guy kicked him in the face and his teeth flew out. The Samoan guy, that I remember that clearly in my mind. But then after that, I didn't really watch fighting too much, until like I got back to Asia and I started watching Pride in like the 2000s, like 2004, 2005, and then that's when I started to consider. Then I started watching the UFC, again. Anderson Silva, BJ Penn was going on at that time. I don't know. I kind of like not watched it during the Chuck Liddell era and Randy Couture. It didn't really attract me. I was watching Pride at that time, so I didn't really pay attention to the UFC.
Pride was just, there's really nothing like it. And I know Ryzen tried to recreate that a little bit, but I started, I'll kind of give you the Coles notes. Not that I'm trying to steal your question here, but I watched The Ultimate Fighter is what got me into watching MMA. Prior to that, I remember hearing about the UFC. I was a big pro wrestling fan for like 3 years when I was like a teenager. So that kind of carried over to this because like what I liked about The Ultimate Fighter was that you saw these characters on the show that were real characters, and then they actually get to fight. And I remember, and that was just such a good season. You had someone I know you've talked to a lot, Mike Swick. Mike Swick was like one of my favorite guys. Chris Liebman, Josh Koscheck, Diego Sanchez, like just such a good cast of like Hall of Famers. Kenny Florian, like just a really cool cast. And then from there it was like, and I came in right at the time when Pride was kind of coming to an end, but I remember like that card with Dan Henderson and Vanderlei Silva, that like, I forget that card, but that was the one with Sokoju upsetting Little Nog. Like it was like, just a crazy card. Mac Danzig was on that card. It was just, it was so
What
cool.
year was The Ultimate Fighter, the one that you watched?
2004.
That was 2004. I think I started watching the UFC like 2006 or something, maybe. It was after that. It was when like Dan Henderson came over and he had the 2 belts, and
Yeah.
like him and Rampage fought, and then he fought.
Yeah, I remember that.
He
Yeah,
fought
those two-
Anderson, right? He fought Anderson. You know, what I mean, that was kind of like the transition when Pride was started moving over. That's when I started moving over to the UFC and started watching the UFC.
It was crazy. I remember they signed. You remember when they signed Crow Cop? They weren't allowed to use footage because they didn't own it at the time. So they just had this big Croatian flag like spin around in a graphic. It was like super lame. And one other thing was, I remember the first pay-per-view I watched. It was Nate Quarry and Rich Franklin for the middleweight title. And I remember I was all about Nate Quarry because I watched him on The Ultimate Fighter. And if you remember, he got injured on the show, and some people felt like he would have won the show. And he got knocked out in like, I forget, like the first round, stiff, out cold. And it wasn't Rogan doing the comment, or it wasn't Goldberg doing the commentary. It was someone else. I can't remember who it was, but it was if you go and look at that highlight of Rich Franklin, Nate Quarry, it's a different commentator. It was weird. It was like Rogan was off for a night or something.
It was straight up like Terry Edom style.
Yeah, we could do a whole podcast on that, I'm sure. Rakic has been getting wins, but his last couple took very little risks and lackluster how he started his UFC career. I think Rakic, you know, I would agree with that. I think if he had taken more risks, I think people would be more on board with him immediately getting a shot.
But
that's why,
you know, fighting smarter gets you wins. You know what I mean? So it's like a very thin line right there. You know what I mean? Are you going for the wins, or are you? Do you want to be Justin
Gaethje and lose, you know, a couple that's what happened to Gaethje early on, right? He had a couple key losses, but he eventually found his way there. I thought Ozdemir beat Reyes too. There we go. Should Smith get the loser of the title fight, Yuri Glover, early next year? No, like I really like Anthony Smith. I kind of feel like this 3-fight win streak's a bit weird. Like he beat Jimmy Crute, right? But that was more of like an injury. And then who else did he beat? He beat Ryan Spann in the last one, and they beat Devin Clark. Does that really qualify as beating two kind of low-ranked guys deserve the loser of that fight? I don't think so. Like, I feel like Smith needs a couple more key wins to get back in that conversation, because there was a point when people were talking about him getting cut. Do you remember this, when he was losing to like Rakic and Glover, and then he lost to John? So I think we got to pump the brakes a bit on Smith. I love Smith. I think he's a great analyst. I think he's a good fighter. I just don't think he should be in that conversation yet, including when he wanted this rematch. I thought, why are we doing this? You just fought Rakic. What was it? Was it 2019 or 2020? I can't remember when he fought him, but it was
not too long ago.
Yeah, it was 2020. Yeah, it was last year. So why do we need to see this rematch? It's not necessary. So crazy to me that Robertson, Kutalaba, Smith, and Santos all had Glover hurt early on his run to the title, but Jan didn't have a moment. It's just the way fights work out. I mean, there's a lot of things that don't make sense, right? Like, how does Pat Healy beat Jim Miller? I know that ended up being a no contest because of the marijuana thing, but like, they're just fights that just sometimes fighters just have like an off night, or they don't look as great. Remember Czech Congo dropped Cain Velasquez? That's another one where it's like, I remember thinking like, okay, maybe Cain's not as good as we thought. And then because he got dropped in that fight, he ended up winning. But then look at the run he went on after that. It was crazy. So I don't know.
You never know the whole story about Jan entering that fight either. You know what I mean? There might have been something, you know, fishy about like him entering that fight. Maybe he had an injury. We don't know those things because they're not going to talk about that. Maybe in the interview coming up, you know, this next fight, maybe, but you just don't know.
Who should Colby and Masvidal fight next if they don't put them against each other? Which I don't think they will. Yeah, I mean, look, this is why is this not happening? And I'm pretty sure it's on Masvidal's end, because like I know Colby wants the fight. I couldn't see a reason why Colby wouldn't want that fight. It's very much stylistically benefits him. That's so unfortunate we're not going to get to see this. So as far as what's next, first off, let's put cold water on that Khamzat Chimaev rumor. Someone was reporting that, and then they were mentioning, someone in my Discord was like, oh, that looks like the fight's happening. I was like, well, where'd it come from? Some guy named Freak MMA or something, guy I've never heard of. Unless Junkie or Fighting or ESPN or Marcel or someone is reporting this, don't buy into it, because some people, there's a lot of Instagram accounts that just they post fake stuff so they can get followers, and this is a prime example of that. So as far as what's next, I don't know. Colby's very picky about opponents, and you know, Masvidal, like I know he's been talking about Jake Paul, and of course all these fans are falling for the bait of, oh, we got to see Masvidal, Jake Paul next. He's under UFC contract. He's not going to go box Jake Paul, so we can forget about that. I don't know what they do. I think Nate Diaz is the domino that's got to fall. If Nate Diaz ends up fighting McGregor or someone else, then that takes Masvidal out of the equation, and then they got to do something else. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't have an answer for either of them of who they fight next. I don't know.
Well, Masvidal did a video about Jake Paul, and he was very clear that Jake Paul needs to come over to the UFC and fight. He's not going to go over to boxing. That's what he said. Masvidal said that out of his mouth. And I, you know, and that's the right way to take it, you know, that's the right, because everybody's calling for him to, you know, Jake Paul's calling him out, but really in reality, the UFC wants Jake Paul to come over and fight in MMA, not vice versa, right? They're not going to put Masvidal out there to fight Jake Paul, you know what I mean, unless they do some kind of special deal like Conor did, you know what I mean, with Mayweather. But I don't think that that's going to happen, because it seems like Dana White doesn't really respect Jake Paul one bit. But Colby, Man, I wish he would fight Dustin Poirier, to be honest with you. I would like to see that fight.
Well, Poirier doesn't really get much out of that, though, to be honest. Like, he'd be
He
better fighting
doesn't,
Nate Diaz.
but Masvidal doesn't really get much out of fighting Colby either. And
No,
they all have
but
beef with Colby, you know?
Yeah, well, but I think for Masvidal, like, it doesn't matter if he loses. Like, he's lost plenty of fights. Like, it's no big deal.
It doesn't matter if Poirier loses either.
I think it does, though, because I think, like, he's going to go down as one of the greatest of all time. Masvidal isn't. Masvidal is going to go down as a guy who got an amazing knockout that you can never take that away from him. BMF champion, all that stuff. But him losing another fight is not a big deal. Poirier, I think it does, because I think Poirier's got a Hall of Fame resume.
Greatest of all time?
Poirier, I think he goes in the Hall of Fame.
I think he shits the bed every time he goes and fights for the undisputed title. That's what's happened, and he's gotten choked out both times. You know what I mean? Like,
true.
Does that
won an interim title though?
You know what I mean? All greatest of all. I don't. Charles Oliveira is on his way to becoming
not a goat. No, definitely not a goat. But I think he's Hall of Fame. Where kind of what I'm pointing out is that I think with Poirier, losses matter more than say a guy like Masvidal, because Masvidal I don't think would be considered a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And he's a money fight. Masvidal is a money fight now. So, all
right, let's zoom through these. Sorry to keep you guys waiting. Bilal Colby is a good stylistic matchup, but I think the trash talk would be too spicy. I don't think the trash talk would be spicy at all. I think Colby's a much better trash talker than Bilal is. Bilal did his call out the other night. You know, didn't really do it for me. I don't know. No, I don't think, some guys have it, some guys don't. I think Bilal, you know, I definitely love the progression in his personality, and I think the show that he's done, remember the show is great and getting his name out there. I know Colby definitely has some lines that are misses as opposed to hitting, but I think Colby's still better in that regard. And I don't know. I don't know if they want to do that. What does Colby get out of that fight other than, I guess, Bilal's top 5 now, right? So I don't know.
That's crazy. Did you ever think Bilal would be ranked top 5 at the end of 2021? I think nobody predicted that.
But I also didn't predict Wonderboy Thompson losing as badly as he did to Bilal. Like, if you think about it on the scorecards, Bilal actually did a better job than Gilbert Burns did. Although I think
Gilbert Burns gave out the game plan, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
The perfect road to defeating Wonderboy. And you know what they always say, you can't develop your skills in a 3, 4, 5 month span. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen like that. So I think that's what Bilal saw, and he took advantage of it. But that's just insane that Bilal has got he's got number 5 next to the name. I never would ever.
Well, this is where we're really going to see the test here, because again, like, and I'm not trying to discredit Bilal by saying this, but you look at the 2 guys he fought, they're on the decline. Maya and Wonderboy, clearly. He fights like, let's look at the top 5 right now, just real quick. Like, if he fights a Colby, if he fights a Luque, if he fights a Burns, I would pick all of them against him. I really would.
Yeah.
Leon Edwards, I know people act like, oh, there was the eye poke, but Edwards was pretty much winning that fight leading up to that. So I don't know. Yeah. We'll see what they decide to do. Bilal probably could beat Masvidal, though. Masvidal is probably out of any division, and I don't hate Masvidal when I say this, but like, out of any ranking, Masvidal being number 6 is crazy to me. Like, Sean Brady would beat Masvidal. Neil Magny, I think, would be Masvidal. Masvidal is not as good as people think. Anyways, that's a podcast in itself. If Ankalaev finishes Santos 2 weeks before Rakic Blachowicz, and Rakic wins another lackluster decision, can Ankalaev cut the line to fight the winner of Teixeira Prohaska? Absolutely. It's all about timing. I mean, we've seen this how many times where someone gets an impressive win or whatever. It's absolutely possible. So don't put any. And who's his manager? Ali. Which we might as well mention this again. Who signed with Ali yesterday? Did you notice that? Junior Dos Santos.
Oh.
Now, why would Junior Dos Santos sign with Ali Abdelaziz? Oh, right. They have a new promotion called Eagle FC. I'm telling you guys, this is going to be World Series of Fighting 2.0. Ali's going to sign, because this was the thing back in the World Series of Fighting days where you had to sign with Ali to sign with World Series of Fighting. And then, so he controls that. And then he's got it in with the matchmakers. And just keep an eye on that stuff, because the fighters that are managed by them, some of the matchups are kind of in favor of those guys. So, and we talked about this. I know they're not the only promotion doing this. There's obviously a ton of other promotions, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who he ends up fighting. I heard a rumor that they're trying to get him and Mark Hunt to fight. So
why not?
Yeah, well, absolutely. But that's going to be a hefty price tag. You got to fly Mark Hunt all the way up from New Zealand, and you got to pay him. He's not going to come cheap. So
yeah, I look at it like this: Ali's not the only one doing it. So talking
but what
about
promoters doing this?
It,
okay, no, I agree, and we mentioned LFA. Obviously Ed Suarez is a manager and also runs the
Cage Warriors. You know what I mean?
Cage Warriors
there's
is
a lot
another
of
one.
them.
Yeah. There are
of them out there.
I know, but we still got to call it out. But on this level, like, we're talking like, this is Eagle FC is supposed to be a promotion that's going to be competing with like Bellator and PFL and all that, right?
I'd pump the brakes on that real quick right there.
Well, no,
right?
but that's what they want to be though. Like they're not trying to be like a cage. Like Cage Warriors is a UK based MMA promotion. Eagle FC is trying to be global, right? If you think of all the other promotions, like there aren't many reach. Like Titan FC is not a global promotion.
They don't have the backing and the funding and all that.
No,
but
that Eagle FC does. That's where it gets interesting. So that's all I'm saying. Just keep an eye on that. But listen, and I'm not trying to go after him specifically. I mean, I think it's of course Cage Warriors is like that. Julian Arosa, ask his story about fighting Paddy Pimblett in Cage Warriors and how Graham Boynton's the promoter at Cage Warriors and he's also the manager of him. So yeah. Anyways. There's lots to talk about there, but just something I wanted to put on the radar because people are starting to catch on. I saw as soon as they saw him sign JDS, I saw all these people on Twitter saying, "Oh, he's going to Eagle FC." Of course, that's what's going to happen. Yeah. Let's see. We know James's prediction, but what's JHK's opinion on Charles versus Gaichi?
I've picked against Charles every single time, and I'm going to pick him against him again. Why not?
There we go.
He'll eventually lose.
Yeah, I know. I'm the same way. I'm on the bandwagon desire. I'd actually like to see them book Reyes versus Ozdemir too. That I can get behind. I've seen all these people say, I want to see Anthony Smith and Reyes. I want to see Reyes against, someone really good. And I'm like, guys, you can't give Reyes another tough opponent. He's had 3 tough opponents. You got to give him a bounce back. Give him one sort of favor here. Give him like a Ryan Spann or something, like some fighter where I think Reyes could probably win, because otherwise you've just built up all this momentum with the fighter. Remember, Reyes was undefeated when he fought John Jones, right? Yeah. So you built up all this momentum. You want to get him a 4th straight loss potentially. Like you got to be careful with who they match your opponents up with. Yeah, I think Ozdemir's a great fight. Ozdemir's fallen off a cliff a bit.
Kutalaba is a good fight too. He's number 15.
There you go.
Why not?
Exactly. I like the line of thinking here. If Rakic wins nicely, he gets a title shot. Who does Jan fight if he wins? Jan would also probably be back in the title picture, I would think.
Yeah, I think he'll be
just because he won the title and defended it once, I think. So
yeah,
it's got to count for something. Jan has better fight IQ. Everyone thought Israel was going to faint and outclass Jan, but watching the fight, Jan actually outfeinted Israel. I'm going with Jan by 4th round knockout. Could see it happen, Ursel, for sure. I mean, again, I'm not oblivious to Jan's
But we
power.
thought that against Glover too. I did.
Glover's going to headline that event in Brazil. Charles co-main event could happen for sure.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Andy, if Rakic doesn't get an impressive performance, will his stock rise at all in y'all's opinion? Yeah, I mean, I think if you continue to get wins, that's got to raise your stock a bit.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I think he puts himself in line, even if it's like a controversial win, a win's a win in that division, and he'll be 3 in a row, and against a former champ, a win against a former champ, it does a lot for your stock in the eyes of the promotion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Let's get to another question as I try and retweet this. A little worried for Justin. If the title fight isn't booked before Beneil Islam fight, I think the winner of Beneil Islam fight is going to get the next shot. And this is where things get interesting because Ali manages all those guys, right? So I'm just waiting for the day, and what's going to happen where Ali's going to have to pick one of his guys and the other guy's going to get upset. It's got to happen, right? And this seems like a good scenario where that could take place because all I've been hearing from all fans, and I know he's got a big fan base, is Islam, they should just forget about the Beneil fight and just give him the title shot. And I get that. I get the line of thinking because he's got a 9-fight win streak, but Gaichi deserves it. But that could happen. You never know. Or there's an injury. I mean, you never know what could happen, right? So I think Islam and Beneil will still fight, but I wouldn't be surprised if Islam, maybe for whatever reason, finds himself in a title shot. Who knows?
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know if Justin will be worried. I think that he has pretty much solidified his spot as the next guy in line. I think the UFC is not going to have, unless he gets injured or something. Yes, then the winner probably slides in. But I don't know. I think Justin fights Charles.
I like that. Do you think they could put 2 title fights and have Charles Gaethje and Nunes Pena in Rio? I don't think they're going to do Nunes Pena in Rio. No. Pena's the champ. To me, that doesn't really make sense. Unless Pena
Nunes
really
is
wants
the
to
champ too.
Oh, well, no. But at 130, if they were to do the rematch,
but it's champ versus champ still. You know what I mean?
I guess. I don't know. That's not really fair to Pena. It's like when, although, saying that, they made Matt Serra fight George St. Pierre defend his title in Montreal, which I was at that fight.
They made Andrade defend her title against Wei Li in China, and then and then I think what was it? They
love Wei Li though, right? Yeah.
I think Rose defended her title against, or what was it? It was one of the other fights too, where they had to go to their challengers.
I think Rose did fight Andrade in Brazil, did she not? Or maybe I'm completely out to lunch on that.
Maybe she lost. Yeah, she lost the fight in Brazil. She lost.
Where she lost the title to Rose.
Right.
Was that in Brazil? Let me see.
Yeah, that was in Brazil. She got dropped on her head.
Yeah, that was oops, I was looking at the second fight here. I just want to double check this because I know there's going to be someone. This is always the most annoying thing. I don't know if you ever experienced this on live streams, but yeah, it was Brazil. On live streams is where like you'll make a mistake and then you like forget to correct it or whatever, and then someone in the comments is like, "Well, actually, this is what happened," and it's like, okay, like I'm being asked on the fly here. Come on.
Yeah.
James, you got into the UFC the year I was born. Yikes. I know I'm old. Listen, it's my birthday in what next Friday.
Wow.
So,
Early happy birthday.
Gonna be 37 years young. So it's gonna be good. Rakic's stock has already gone down after that uneventful performance against Santos. When he loses to Jan, he's gonna get up and comers. Disagree. If his stock went down, he's not getting this fight.
Mm-hmm.
The Santos win, look, it wasn't pretty, but I don't think his stock went down. I think his stock only went down in terms of him getting a title shot, but him beating Santos is why he's getting this fight. He barely beat Santos. I don't think he's getting this fight. He decisively beat Santos. That's why his stock went up. So I get it. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Ferguson loses to Gregor. Does he get cut? And who should the loser of Islam Benil get? Okay, well, first off, that fight's not officially booked, but it sounds like that's what they're going towards. If Ferguson loses, yeah, I would think he gets cut. Because here's the thing. It's not even that Ferguson's like a popular guy. It's the price tag. I think if Kevin Lee taught us anything, this whole Kevin Lee getting released, it's that the UFC's not going to fund the bill for guys that aren't performing. And I think if Ferguson loses this, which I think he probably will if he fights Gregor, I think that's the end of the road for Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, because he's probably getting paid 6 figures to fight. You know what I mean? That's a pretty hefty price tag, like you said.
Get 5 contender series guys for the price of that, you know?
Yeah, that's all right.
Does Khamzat fight Magny? I'll stop you right there. No. They've had so many opportunities to book this fight, and I just don't see it happening now. I know he's the only guy to accept Khamzat. That's the funny thing. Dana White's like, nobody wants to fight Khamzat. And then finally acknowledged that Neil Magny wants to fight Khamzat. He's like, yeah, but Neil Magny is one of those really tough guys. Well, then book the fight.
Yeah.
Like
if Luke said he'd fight him.
Yeah, but the reason they're not booking the fight, and I've said this from the beginning, is they want to fast track this guy to a title shot, and beating Neil Magny is no different really than beating Li Jingliang, in my opinion. Like, they got to give him a top 5 guy, I think. Give him Bilal. Look, if Bilal wants to say Bilal wants his title shot, give him Bilal. Let's see what happens.
I think Bilal said something too about fighting.
Bilal's all good. He's willing to take the fight. There was something on Twitter the other day, but make it happen here because I want to see this guy fight. I want to see how good he is. Like honestly, I know this sounds nuts, but I wouldn't have an issue with Khamzat getting the title shot. I know he's absolutely not deserving of it because he's only got 1 ranked win, but just to see where he fits in the division because I honestly don't know how that fight goes. I think I would pick Usman just because of how great Usman's been and who he's fought, but you never know, man. Like we might see something special here. It's like when McGregor fought Aldo. It's like, you know, I remember thinking, okay, this is it. This is finally the fight where Conor loses, and then he knocks him out. Now, granted, there was a lot of things that went into that fight. I think Aldo mentally was taxed out a bit from having an opponent that got under his skin. But you never know. I just want to see, at some point, I want to see Khamzat just given a really tough test and see how he does. I'm at that point now with him. Because, look, Li Jingliang, I know probably is never going to fight for a title. I think we can safely say that. But still, the fact that like there's just this intrigue, and you rarely get this in MMA where you have someone that's like going out there and destroying opponents. So I'm at the point now with him where it's like, let's see what he's made of. Or maybe he ends up like Johnny Walker. I don't think he will, but remember Johnny Walker, we fought Corey Anderson. Everyone's like, this is the guy to beat John Jones. And then Corey Anderson's like, see you later.
Yeah.
Knocks him out. It's crazy.
That was just like the downfall right there, right? After he got knocked out right there. Man, that sucks.
Yeah, no, it was nuts. Nobody wants that smoke with Colby when it comes to trash talk. Yeah, I mean, there just aren't a lot of good trash talkers in that division if you think about it.
And
I thought
Colby's
Usman did
not
a good job.
really like he's okay, but he's not like
he's hit or miss sometimes. And I'll say this is someone who obviously likes Colby. I interview him. He some stuff misses for sure, but some stuff doesn't. Some stuff's funny, like him, like the whole like. Okay, I thought this was good. Some people disagree. When Submission Radio asked him, what did you say to Usman after the fight? And he says, get my promo code for my bookie. Like, that's funny. I thought that was good. He's like, use the promo code Colby and save 50% off your match deposit bonus with my bookie, one of the sponsors. That's good comedy. Him saying some of the other stuff like, it's fake news. I don't know. Some of the stuff.
Talking about Poirier's wife.
No. That crosses the line. I'm not with that either. I mean, come on. Like,
that's not cool,
leave the guy's wife.
But Colby is funny though. Like he does say, like after the fight, I think after the title fight in the press conference, he said some hilarious stuff. Even though he lost the fight, he lost the title, but he was saying some funny things. Things that are not true, but they were funny, right? But going at Poirier's wife, it's like, I don't know, man.
No. That crosses the line. I'm with you there. I'm completely with you there. Speaking of crossing the line, Sean Strickland's another one of those guys. I know you and I have talked about this privately about how, Strickland does cross the line, and there's certainly some stuff he says. It's like, dude, I would not say that. Where's Paradigm on line one trying to tell you to pipe it down? But did you see that tweet about that guy? And I think the guy did it as like kind of a joke, but he talked about how, oh, my girlfriend cheated on me. What should I do? And Sean Strickland wrote this huge thing saying, well, maybe if you weren't such a little bitch. And then it was just so funny because like Strickland's delivery when it comes to saying his things is just, it's like second to none. Like he's so good at it. Some stuff he hits really well, some stuff he doesn't, but Strickland's
he's another guy that's hit or miss, but he's funny when he's funny.
Some stuff when he hits is pretty damn funny, and that's when like people make fun of him. Like I know Bilal and him have like a thing. It's like, come on, part of that's a bit of jealousy, I'm sure, because Sean does hit the notes pretty well on some of the trash talk. But anyway,
he's playing his role. You know what I mean? Like his role is like
it's not even a role. That's just how
or whatever.
That's no, it's just but here's the thing. You know who his best friend is? It's Chris Curtis, and Chris knows he's like Sean.
There's a lot of guys that say that. Come on, James. It's like, my friend is Asian. You know what I mean? Like,
no, but still, like I think a guy like Chris Curtis, like who's, I don't know. I think like the fact that he's been friends with Strickland for so long.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we're not gonna cross that line, but I'm just saying, like with certain guys, they have a gimmick, right? And Sean Strickland now figured out what his gimmick is. Like, what is his line of thinking? And it's him being him being like whoever he is, and it's hit or miss, but sometimes it's pretty funny, man. I agree.
Sinister mentions I'd like to see Brady versus Bilal. Honestly, I think that's a perfect matchup. So I tweeted this out right after Bilal won because I think people forget Sean Brady was supposed to fight Bilal a year ago. And then Diego Lima ended up getting the fight. And then I don't know what happened, if there was an injury, and then they ended up moving that fight to earlier this year. But yeah, Sean Brady Bilal makes perfect sense. Brady's never lost. Brady's a really good wrestler, so could Bilal do the same game plan against a Brady? Probably not. And then Brady had a bit of issues in that third round with Chiesa, so I'm curious to see, can he, prove his worth a little bit more. But I think that's a great fight there for Bilal Muhammad.
Yeah. And Bilal's real durable, man. He's very surprisingly durable, like how well his chin stands up. But Brady, man, once he gets you to the ground, man, I don't know, Bilal, he could be in there. I don't think Bilal takes that fight, though. I think he's now looking at the sunrise right now, Yeah,
but if he doesn't get one of those Burns or Luques or any of those guys, he might have to take someone like that just to keep active.
He'll have to take Hamzat.
Yeah. I think Reyes is in the right mental and physical space, beats Anthony Smith fairly easily. But the problem with Smith is he's a tough guy to take out. And I just think that, like, I don't think it's a cakewalk for him. I think there's easier opponents in the weight class for Dominic Reyes. And I just think, like, you take that risk with Smith because Smith seems to have turned a corner. But, I don't know. I think you got to be careful with Reyes. Maybe I'm looking at this wrong, but I just think that, like, you build a guy up like Smith, like Reyes, who's a pretty exciting guy, like in terms of his, fights and everything. Why waste it on him getting a fourth potential loss here? I think you gotta be careful with what he does. But
yeah, I don't think it's physical. I think it's mental, man. I think he hit this mental like block, and his next fight is gonna be so pivotal of like where his career goes.
Well, he's at Extreme Couture now, so that's interesting. And then he's obviously taken a ton of time off. He was very honest with me in the interview I did. In fact, I don't think anyone's interviewed him since that fight other than I have, and it's been interesting to see him just kind of be low key, and I think he's going to come back with a vengeance. Really like that guy. He's huge too. He could fight a heavyweight. He's a big guy. I made a joke in the comment section about Sergio Pettis missing up the follow-up punch on Kyoji Horiguchi, and people couldn't wait to correct me. Yeah, it's just there is a bit of like people wanting to do this, like what we're doing, and so they want to impose their dominance. It's like it goes back to the animal nature of us of like imposing our dominance on each other, right? So that's why people act like that. I don't know.
Well, hiding behind a screen name and a fake picture is also, like what
makes people a lot braver. I know, that's what I always say. Like, no one's going to come up. Like, I had a guy DM me. I told the story on my Q&A last week. I had a guy DM me about how he was like, I told you that Kevin Lee would sign with Eagle FC. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, okay, like I make mistakes sometimes or whatever. And he's like, yeah, you should do some, like, he was like trying to like lecture me. And I'm like, dude, like no one, like if you don't have to watch my stuff, like if you don't agree with me, you don't have to watch it. He's like, I just think you have a big ego. And I'm like, you realize I do like a free show every single week and I answer people's questions and all this stuff. Like, what are you talking about? And the guy was just, he was just being rude. But that's the length people will go just to like try and be like, I know more than you do. And it's like, I said, dude, if you're so good, make your own YouTube channel and find success. Like, don't quit wasting time on what I'm doing. It's crazy.
Well, there's a guy that like says like, man, you're an analyst. You're the worst. And I was like, dude, I'm not an analyst. Like, go find an analyst, the guys that break down fights. I'm talking about real guys, like guys that like put their face out there. Like he's like, oh, Jack Slack and Kenshin, Lawrence Kenshin. I was like, those dudes don't even put their face out there. Like they're just hiding behind their name. And of course they're great at what they do, but still, man, you got to have some accountability if you talk shit about fighters, man. Like if you talk about how they train or how they move or their chin is gone, like put your face there. Like show yourself. Don't hide behind it. They're just a higher level of these guys on YouTube or any social media platform, hiding behind a name and a picture.
I think it's a generation thing, though. A lot of the people who write stuff like that, I notice they're all younger kids, and I think they grew up in a generation where this is acceptable. But like you and me, like we're old school. Like, you know, I had parents that, like, I had a dad who's pretty, you know, like teaching about respect and stuff. And I think it's just a different thing. Like it's like I honest to God, I've never gone on someone's channel and wrote like a bunch of crap or anything or said anything. I just won't watch it. It's a waste of time. But there's people I think who grew up with this and they just think it's socially acceptable. It's annoying more than anything. So I'm trying to get better at that in 2022, just ignoring all that because it's so annoying, man. Like I think the second when someone comes out of the gate right at the bat and wants to start insulting you, just leave it at that because you're never going to win that argument. I think Wonderboy Chiesa makes sense in terms of rankings. What do we think? Wonderboy can beat a solid grappler at this point. Well, I don't know. Like Chiesa might be able to find success and do what everyone else has done, but I think that's the fight to make because I don't want to see Wonderboy fight like a Muslim Sokolov or anyone like I'd rather see him fight like a notable guy, you know? Like Chiesa's in the same boat. He's had opportunities to move up and he hasn't. So I'd be fine with that fight.
I want to see Stephen Thompson fight Li Jingliang or Ponzinibbio.
Sure.
I think those are the fights. Or, he fought Jeff Neal, right? He did, right? Yeah. So I think Lee or Santiago. I think those are good fights right there.
Alex Pereira, Bruno Silva announced March 12th. Thoughts? Great fight. Yes. Awesome matchup. The thing is, my thing with Pereira is like, you know, this is probably the right way to go about his career. Keep giving him exciting fights like this, but at some point he's got to fight a guy who's good on the ground, and that's where we're going to see the real test of him. Because like I know everyone wants to see him fight Izzy, but you got to work your way up and fight all the killer. It's like Mortal Kombat. You know, when you're going up the rankings to fight Goro, you got to fight different styles, and I feel like you can't just keep giving him strikers. It's like how they kept giving Nick Diaz strikers in Strikeforce, and he never fought a wrestler. There was a reason for that because they wanted to keep it exciting. But in the UFC, you got to prove yourself. So how would he do against like I don't know, Rodolfo Vieira or someone like that who's really good on the ground? I don't know. We'd have to see. Or who's the guy who just submitted Eric Anders? Muniz? Or no? Who's the guy?
He's light heavyweight, I think.
Who, no? Muniz?
Yeah.
Who's the guy? Middleweight? No, I think he's middleweight because Anders.
Okay, Muniz. Muniz just submitted Eric Anders.
Eric Anders. Like, how would Pereira do in that fight? That's something I'd be curious about.
That's a good fight right there. But I think Muniz is way ahead of Pereira right now. At this point, right?
For sure. I'm picking Chimaev over the whole division. When Chimaev got brought up to Usman at the last press conference, he immediately alluded to retirement. Well, I don't know.
You're reading too deep into that.
Yeah, I know. Exactly, Jack. Being a little too armchair psychologist. Watching the ESPN interview with Brett and Dana, it looked like he preferred Luque over Leon for the title shot. Well, he was the backup. And if you're Leon, what the heck? I think they're still trying to work on Leon versus Hamzat, which is like, why are we doing this? Like,
for London, right?
Yeah. I want to see Strickland back on Instagram. Well, he's still banned, so Twitter's as good as it's going to get. Wonderboy Leach is a good call. I'd love to see Wonderboy MVP. Everyone wants to see Wonderboy versus MVP, but MVP is still under Bellator contract. I don't know what the deal is with him. Wonderboy dominated Neil last year. He's not washed yet. I don't know, man. I don't think Wonderboy gets taken down like that 2 years ago. And I know he beat Neil, but remember Neil had some health issues. Remember his corner wasn't available that night as well. I don't know. I think I'm at the point now with Wonderboy where I think the decline is setting in, but we'll see.
Well, the thing about Wonderboy is that, you know, a couple years back, guys weren't like consistently trying to take him down in fights, right? There were guys that went for takedowns, but it wasn't like they were on him like white on rice. Like they were on him, like Bilal was on him, you know what I mean? Like he was moving forward. He wasn't afraid to get hit, and he was on him like on his legs. And so was Gilbert Burns, you know what I mean? I don't think it's like him not having. I think his wrestling wasn't like defense-wise wasn't as good. It's just that people didn't implement that game plan until Gilbert Burns did, and he showed you the blueprint. And I think that's what we're seeing. I don't know if he's washed though. That word, you know, I don't know what does that
not washed,
mean?
but I just don't think he's a contender. But the thing that
guy
anymore.
says he's not washed yet. I'm like, I don't know what that means really. Like,
well, washed means like you can't beat any like you get dominated in your fights. I mean, you did get dominated.
Like BJ Penn. BJ Penn, when he was
Washington.
losing, that's washed to me. You know what I mean? Like, but
I don't think we implied that. I just think that Wonder Boy's not a contender anymore. And I think he's on the decline. Now, is that decline enough to beat like a Neil Magny or Li Jingliang? I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. But we'll you know, obviously the fight on Saturday was not competitive. We'll just leave it at that. I want Burns versus Bilal. If Bilal wins that, I'd be 8-fight unbeaten streak, and title shot should be next. But this is what I always say. Like, do you guys want to see Gilbert Burns fight Usman so soon? He just fought him this year. Like, that's the thing. Like, I guess you could do that fight, but I don't know. I just you got to be careful with Burns and who he fights. And I just think like people want to see Burns and Hamzat. Okay, I get that. That's an interesting fight. But if Burns wins that, what do you do with him? He'd have to get the title shot. I was arguing with someone in the comment section yesterday about saying, I don't know how you can possibly think that Burns would get a title shot if you beat Hamzat, because Hamzat's ranked 11th. What planet are you living on that you don't know that Hamzat's probably one of the most popular fighters in the UFC right now? Beating him is like beating a guy who's ranked number 2, basically. Of course they would want to get him the title shot because he'd beat the boogeyman. Hamzat Chimaev's the boogeyman right now. You beat him, you're as good as gold, you know? So I don't know how, like, I mean, I know most people don't think like that, but this guy like couldn't fathom that if you beat an 11th ranked guy, that he get the title shot. Of course he would. He would have beat Wonder Boy, who's ranked high at the time. And then if he beats Hamzat, it's you know, it's good enough to get a title shot. So right now I think like Luque is behind him in the rankings. I think he's ahead of him in the title shot line, right? Yeah.
If you really look at it, like you got Edwards, you got Luque, and then who do you got? I think those are the two options you have for the next title shot at this point, right? So it's kind of getting thin. But Burns, I don't think he gets the title shot he gets the title shot if he beats Bilal, right? Because there's the line is very thin, right? Because eventually if he fights Bilal,
and you think Usman's
when is
about
Usman
fighting...
coming back?
Well, that's the thing. No one really knows right now. It'd be great to get an interview with him and find that out. But I think you're going to be like, and I don't think Usman's really thrilled about having to fight Burns again. I mean, they're buddies. Yeah. So who knows? True, and they have the same manager. So
Usman was just training at Sanford.
I know.
Recently.
Wonder Boy's game relies on reflexes, and he's 38. Only natural to begin declining now. Exactly. Some fighters just don't, you know, they don't have it, or they decline. If Rose the strawweight goat if she beats Carla and gets that sweet revenge, 100%. Although I think that I don't think it. Well, I shouldn't say that because Carla looked really good in her last fight. I was going to say like Carla's not.
I don't know. I think if anybody's going to beat Rose right now, I think Carla's the one to beat her. This is just my opinion on that.
We'll see. I think if it stays standing, I think Rose has a clear advantage there. I don't think Carla would have to out wrestle her. Rose would have to completely have fallen off a cliff in terms of her. Like, we don't really see her get wrestled ever. I think that's the only
nobody
way.
wrestles her though.
Yeah, that's true. But look where she's training. I mean, come on. You got Justin Gaichi. You've got so many good fighters that are, you know, probably pushing her. So we'll see. That's an interesting one. Okay, a couple more questions and we'll dart out of here. Happy for Carla that she got the title shot. She cleared the years. Yeah, I don't know what took so long. I don't know what the issue was. Remember they were talking about maybe Marina Rodriguez. I don't know, but I think they're just like, okay, we have no one else. Like, other
they
than
were
Marina
waiting
Rodriguez.
for Weili to leave the management company. That's what they were waiting for.
Sam, I don't know what show you're watching here, but you say, why do people call Bilal boring when 80% of his fights are stand-up pressure boxing? What? No one here said boring, and I don't think people have called him boring. I don't know anyone who thought that fight on Saturday was boring. I just think it was. I think he would have done himself some favors if he was able to finish Wonder Boy. But that's, I mean, who finishes Wonder Boy other than the one fight against Pettis, right? It's extremely tough. So we're not of the camp that think Bilal Muhammad is boring. Let's just get to that. Who would you pick between Whitaker or Vettori? Some people are saying Marvin, but I don't know how Marvin wins that at all. No, Whitaker wins that.
Yeah.
Marvin's good, but he's like, Whitaker has that extra gear where he's just like a little bit tougher, a little bit more durable. I don't know.
And a much better grappler, I would think. You know what I mean? Just from their fights.
What happened to GDR? Good question. Again, love to get an interview with her, but
I would love to see her to come out the woodwork and call somebody out. You know what I mean?
Fight Pena. She beat Pena. Well, how come she's not on the microphone right now saying, hey, I beat you 2 fights ago?
Exactly.
Who would be your top 3 fighters to watch of 2022? Okay. Erin Blanchfield. As you guys know, I'm big on the Erin Blanchfield bandwagon. I think she's going to make some noise next year. Manon Furio, who I think is going to beat Jessica Ai. In fact, I think she finishes Jessica. That's how confident I am in her. And I'll pick a male because I don't want to be sexist here. Jamal Hill. I think Jamal Hill really continues his breakout thing next year. So I'm going Jamal Hill as well. What about you?
I think both those females get derailed next year.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, Jamal Hill, I think he's someone to watch, but I think we've been watching him for a while. I think Manel Cape, he's one to watch in that flyweight division. Muhammad Makaev, he's another
Muhammad
one to
Makaev
watch.
for sure. Yeah,
I think he gets the Hamzat treatment if he wins a couple fights. I think they're gonna push him real quick in that division. And the third one is who's the third one? Damn.
Paddy Pimblett.
Yes, Paddy Pimblett. There you go. Paddy the Baddie Pimblett. That deal with what is it?
Barstool.
What did Barstool? Is that even real? Because I didn't see anything with Barstool with him on it.
Yeah, no, they did some stuff in New York, and I'm not sure what the plan is going forward. It just the unfortunate thing, you mentioned Graham Boylan earlier, apparently wants Paddy to start charging Ariel Helwani and all the other media for interviews, which is ridiculous. You have one UFC fight. Didn't you hear about that?
I heard something about people charging for interviews.
I mean, it's not 100% official, but it seems like that's the case, because he had this long post about how fighters should know their worth and they should charge for interviews. And he manages Paddy, and Paddy just had the deal with Barstool. And the rumor was that Ariel was asked for the first time in his career to be charged for an interview. And the rumor was it was Paddy. So it kind of goes hand in hand.
Didn't you do?
I did, but this apparently after the fact, I think because he did so much media, I think his manager's like, well, hold on a second. You got to charge for interviews, which you never do in this industry. You do that, you lose all credibility, because you're basically paying for access, and that's not how it works. It's a give and take. That's like me saying to an amateur fighter, hey, you got to pay me to have my platform. Like, I get certain fighters, they know, like, obviously if you go on a show, you know the views are going to be high, but that you're creating a really slippery slope. And I think Paddy, of all people, is not in a position to do that. He's got one UFC fight, and I know he does get a decent amount of viewership, but like, just don't do certain interviews. Like Israel, he doesn't do many interviews these days because he just puts everything on his channel. I understand that. I get that. But like, don't start charging for interviews. You're just going to alienate your fan base. It's crazy.
Yeah, so, that's wild, man.
Anyways, I know. It's
2022 is coming, man. It's a wild year. It's going to be crazy.
Should T Wood retire from all combat sports? Yeah, I mean, we're getting to the point now with him that, I mean, the way he lost on Saturday, just call it a career. It's all good.
No, I say he continues. I disagree.
But not when he's getting, like, if he, but the thing is, like, you get finished like that takes years off your life. Like, I don't know if it's even worth it for him at his age, like, unless he fights like a grappler or something. I just think it's a risk in him taking more long-term damage. So that's what I think. Didn't say you called him boring, but I don't believe that you haven't seen anyone call him boring. Even John Anik said 60% of fans are. I don't. But then Anik's brother does a show with him. I think they're just making that up. I don't know. Like, it's true. Like, there's a bit of bias there with Anik. So I don't know anyone who calls him. The people who call him boring are not. Yeah, exactly. How do you both predict John Jones will do next year? I hope he fights. I don't know if he does.
Yeah, that's the thing. Honestly. I hope he fights. That's the only thing that you should be predicting right now.
Darren Till, Uriah Hall, we'll break that one down. That's kind of go Hall, to be honest. I think Till's too banged up. Super late. What's good? Good to hear from you, Yorio. Mokaev doesn't seem like a talker. He's not, but he'll let his talking do it in the cage. Happy holidays. Enjoy the vacation, James and JHK. What do you got planned? So I'm going to Toronto tomorrow. First time on a plane in a very long time, so I'll be taking some time off. Oh yeah, quick programming note on this show. So next week we're going to be off. It's totally my fault. I'm going to be away on the Tuesday. The week after, though, we'll figure out a date to when we do it. I'll talk to you in chat. I'll actually be on Eastern time, so even if you wanted to do this a little bit earlier, I can do it because I'll be 3 hours ahead. So we can talk about that and figure out a time. But we will do one the week of the 3rd. I'm back on the 4th, but like, I'm flying back on the 4th, so it won't be Tuesday, but maybe the Monday or the Wednesday or something. We'll figure it out, but we'll definitely do a show not next week, the week after. So just keep that in your schedule as well. Yeah, I think that's it. We don't have any other decent questions here. All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching. If we don't talk to you, which we won't, Happy New Year. Happy holidays. Stay safe. Be well. JHK, anything you got coming up or anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Now just go to this channel and hit that subscribe and the likes and comment. Comments always help even after the show is over. Everybody enjoy the holidays and the new year. Be safe out there. Wear your mask and all that good stuff.
Make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. If you want to give us a Christmas present, you can do that, because if you support the show, you support this platform, you help us out, and we can continue doing the show. So do that. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Obviously, if you're submitting questions, you're already subscribed. Just want to, on behalf of JHK and I, just want to thank everyone who's supported this show. We love doing it. It's a great company. Like, I work for a number of different companies in this industry, and they are by far one of the best. So we're really happy to give you guys this show every week, and we're just really thankful to have the audience. So we really got to thank you guys, if I can kind of get that across during the holidays. Stay safe. We'll be back, like I said, the week of the 3rd. Just keep your eye out on social media when we're going to be doing that, or on this channel. You'll see when our next live stream is. And hope everyone has a great holiday season as I get the ad up here. We'll talk to you guys soon, and happy holidays.